In August of the year 1198, Pope Innocent III called for a new crusade to free Jerusalem and the Holy Land from the grasp of Islam. The Pope's appeal echoed throughout Western Christianity. Some of the most distinguished clergy in all of Christendom traveled and preached the duty of faithful Christians to come to the rescue of the Holy Land. One powerful clergyman burst into tears and fell on his knees before a noble audience in a crowded cathedral while presenting the case for a new crusade. Crusaders themselves did not assign numbers to their expeditions, but this enterprise would become known as the Fourth Crusade. It was doomed to go down in history as a shameful failure. It widened a split in Christianity, and it paved the way for the Muslim conquest of Constantinople and the fall of the Christian Byzantine Empire founded by Constantine the Great. The Virgin Mary, the very Mother of God, would become a pawn in this bloody warfare between Christians and Christians. The Fourth Crusade's beginnings were, however, auspicious. It seemed destined to share the glory of earlier crusades. Jerusalem had first been captured by Muslims in the year 638. 4 centuries later, in 1099, the First Crusade recaptured the Holy City. But less than a century later, Jerusalem was again seized by a Muslim conqueror, Saladin. Pope Innocent III's call to once again rescue Jerusalem resonated in Western Christianity for 4 basic reasons. First was the fact that there was no distinction between religion and secular society in the Europe of the 12th and 13th centuries. Faith infused everything. Christians were genuinely horrified that people that they regarded as heathens controlled the very earth upon which their Savior, Jesus Christ, and his mother, the Virgin Mary, had walked. Among the many unacceptable consequences of Saladin's victory was the loss of the true cross, the cross upon which it was believed that Jesus had been crucified. The second reason was that signing up for the Crusades was a guaranteed ticket out of hell. Everyone from kings to the lowest peasants in the Middle Ages believed that hell was a very real place. They also believed that if they did not properly and completely atone for their sins, of which they believed they had committed many, they were doomed to spend eternity roasting in the fires of hell. Pope Innocent III assured that those who signed up for the Crusades, a process called taking the cross, would win a lifetime ticket out of hell, no matter what their sins, past, present, or future. So long as they fulfilled their Crusaders' vow, they would be spared the eternity of torment that awaited other sinners. The third reason applied especially to the nobles and knights of the chivalrous class. The manly virtue of bravery in combat was vital to the self-esteem of these men. They often held tournaments to prove their bravery and skill in combat. These tournaments were nothing like the well-organized and beautifully decorated tournaments we see in modern film. They were, in fact, a blend of war games and organized brawls, something like modern mixed martial art. There were few rules and no referees. The fighting often sprawled for days over large patches of land. The objective of these games was to force other knights to surrender. If a few knights died in the process, well, that was the cost of being a real man in medieval times. Crusade recruiters made powerful appeals at these tournaments, calling on knights to to prove their manhood on crusade. The fourth benefit to taking the cross was broadcast with a papal wink and nod. It was the possibility of acquiring riches, either through loot and plunder or seizure of land and other material goods from the Muslim enemies. Going on a crusade was an expensive proposition, so the possibility of recouping upfront expenses and reaping a profit hovered over every crusade. The organizers of the Fourth Crusade originally wanted to avoid traveling overland through the Byzantine Empire. Previous crusades had generated friction and sometimes armed combat as they foraged for food in Eastern Orthodox territory. Underlying all of this was what was known as the Great Schism, a split between Western or Latin Christianity and Eastern or Orthodox Christianity. The Great Schism arose over several basic differences in Christian dogma, but the axis for those differences was disagreement over who was the final authority of matters of Christian belief. The Western Latin Christians had decided that the Pope was the final authority on all matters of doctrine and practice. But Eastern Orthodox Christians refused to accept the authority of the Pope. They insisted that building consensus at councils of bishops was the proper model for deciding matters of faith. Furthermore, the Eastern Orthodox believed that the earliest fathers of the Church, in their conciliar meetings, had established most of the doctrine that was necessary to proper worship. The Eastern Orthodox rejected the scholastic or academic practices of Western Christians, whose scholars pored over sacred texts and drew new conclusions on the basis of their logic. The Eastern Orthodox, for example, never accepted the Western doctrine of the Immaculate Conception of Mary. To avoid having to travel overland through the Byzantine Empire, the Western Crusaders contracted with the shipbuilders and merchants of the city of Venice to take them across the Mediterranean Sea in a large fleet built especially for the occasion. In the event, the Crusaders' deal with the Venetian shipbuilders foundered on a financial reef. The organizers failed to meet their optimistic recruiting goals. That meant, in turn, that they simply did not have enough money to pay for the ambitious building and supply project that they had contracted with the Venetians. A compromise was, however, reached. The Crusaders would make a short detour to the Byzantine coast on the Adriatic Sea to bring into line a Venetian outpost that was supposedly in rebellion. But through a devious series of political intrigues, the detour turned into a major rerouting. The Fourth Crusade ended up at the gates of Constantinople, a city that believed itself to be especially blessed, protected by the Mother of God. For centuries, the rulers and people of Constantinople firmly believed that their city, one of the most magnificent in the world, was under the specific and divine protection of the Theotokos, the Mother of God. Elaborate prayers and ritual practices commemorated the belief that Mary had saved them and their city from heathen attacks on several major occasions. One of their most precious icons was that of the Nicopeia. Her benevolent protective power in war is praised in the first stanza of the Orthodox Akathist hymn. Friction between Eastern Christians and Western Christian crusaders burst into flame. Constantinople was torched and sacked by the faithful of the Fourth Crusade. The city's holiest places and its many venerated objects were desecrated. The most valuable were stolen or melted down into bullion. At the end of the day, Constantinople lay in ruins. Thousands of Christians, murdered by thousands of other Christians, lay dead on fields of battle and in the bloody streets and plundered churches of Constantinople. The Crusaders triumphantly bore the Nicomedia icon to Venice, where it resides today in the Cathedral of San Marco. The Fourth Crusaders turned around and went back to Western Europe with their loot, having never set one foot on the Holy Land. Constantinople would eventually recover to some degree from its sack, but it was never the same beautiful, powerful, and glorious city that it had been. The Byzantine Empire was fundamentally weakened. Constantinople ultimately fell to Muslim forces. It became the city we know today as Istanbul. In the next episode, we will explore the role of the Virgin Mary as intercessor, a heavenly mother on call to help the children of her church.